want to welcome everybody. My name is Alberto Vargas. I'm the Associate Director of LACIS. And it's really great to have you here for this presentation. It's a presentation that is very important for LACIS and for the university. It's going to be a panel presentation. And also this is going to reflect if you were curious about what is an incubator grant from IRIS and what's the products that it will yield. So this is an opportunity to learn about this type of collaboration. So the presenters today is going to be Maribeth Collins from the School of Human Ecology, Maria Moreno from the Earth Partnership, UW Arboretum Earth Partnership, Lori DePrit from Global Health Institute, Paul Sedler from Botany, and Connie Flanagan from the School of Human Ecology too. So Paul and Connie are the PIs of this incubator grant, and the rest of the people have been working on this for a long time. We can trace back the origin of this collaboration about 30 years. You're going to see that in the presentation. Salvador Carranza has also been active in one way or another. So welcome. You want me to welcome? We have the room until 1, because we have another conference call after that. But welcome.
So my name is Maribeth Collins, and I am not the PI on this project, and I'm not even a researcher on the project, but I've been helping facilitate the process of a multidisciplinary project with international collaborators and representatives of many UW-Madison units. And so, true to that role, I think what I'm going to do is kind of prompt my collaborators on particular slides for this presentation and just kind of make sure that things are rolling. So thank you all for being here. We're really excited about this project. And the premise of the presentation today is to tell you a little bit about particularly this research incubator grant that we have through the Institute for Regional and International Studies. And Connie and Paul are our PIs on that, so I was hoping that they could talk a little bit about the project's overview. And then we're going to dig in a little bit on how we got to this incubator project and the work that we've done since receiving the award. So Connie and Paul, do you want to just kind of give some background on the IRIS project?
Sure. So I'll just pick up on the notion of connecting landscapes. So the notion here is that landscapes are both natural environments and often are environments where people live with nature or use or abuse nature. And a large goal of this museum project is to connect, in particular youth, but generally families, people, from urban areas who may not have a lot of experience or understanding of their interconnection and their interdependence with rural landscapes and the natural world, and the ways in which their lives depend on that and their responsibility for that. So the connecting landscapes is really the museum's sort of principle, and the ways in which it can be a space that brings together young people, in particular from urban areas, in order to connect with the realities of the environment there, which Paul can say a lot more about because the realities of the environment there are rather special.
Well, I think you covered it well. Just emphasize that this project is built around this museum project. That's really the focus of it, which is going to.
But the unique environments there are something that you.
Yeah, the museum. We're not.
There's going to be a separate slide entirely about the museum, so we'll dig in on that.
You'll see that it's attempting to connect not just to the urban populations, or not just be stuffed birds and cages and boxes and so on, but to get people aware of the whole region, the logical connections between the city and the countryside.
So I think what's interesting to me about this project, from this sort of basic snapshot of the grant project in general, is that we do have these two PIs coming from both pretty distinct disciplinary areas. And I hope that you'll see the way that Connie's civil society and community studies and youth engagement expertise, and then Paul and his entire Nelson Institute communities expertise around sustainability and the natural environment both come into play in this unique project. And that was intentional, that they're kind of each taking a lead in that. So this gets a little bit more into the overview. I guess, do either one of you want to speak specifically to these points, or?
Actually, there's other people who actually have a bit longer history than I do on the connections here.
Well, this and the next slide are a little bit about the long history of UW and University of Guadalajara collaboration as well, so I think Lori could pick up on this too. The project overview, and then the next slide is about the history of the collaboration that we've had with these institutions. So.
Okay, well, I think the most relevant thing to say here is that this project is kind of like a cat with 9, well, hopefully there are 9 lives, and there have been about 3 so far, because there was some really great work done. Eduardo Santana is a UW-Madison alum who did his doctoral work here and has stayed connected through various iterations. There was some really interesting work done some years ago related to public participation in water quality monitoring and all that that can mean in terms of intermunicipal governance. And a little while later, we got some global health projects going, relatively small scale, but there was a delegation visit by the governor of Wisconsin, and we realized that there were so many ways to engage. There were other system campuses that had done work in dairy science that was really amazing and appropriate. There was it happened to be Governor Doyle.
Oh, it's long.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm saying this is a while ago, but we took that time, and Sal and I were there to create a really robust and broad UW system MOU, so that, because the University of Guadalajara is also a system. So politically, that's where we are. We have a valid MOU that's really broad for everything that could relate to well-being or things you would want to do, and maybe even some things you wouldn't want to do. And there are sister cities projects and other things going on. But this particular project came together around the museum, and what they wanted was research to practice kind of things, doing exhibits that would make a difference in people's lives, and having kind of scientific backup. And I don't mean backup in a in a negative way. I mean like scientific support, and then joint programming and some really creative things that would be like, what's a museum? They didn't even want to call it a museum at first. It's like, what would a museum look like that you'd want to go to many times, or that would be like, I visited a museum and it changed my life, or I visited a museum and it made me want to go to this place. So that was kind of the spirit of it. And we were hoping to rejuvenate all these programs with just a year, almost like a planning grant was like one half of it, where we would form teams and get some exchanges going so that we could develop projects for the next whatever years. And that's the idea of the Iris incubator, is that you have little fragile things that by the end of it they're jumping out of the box and having babies and stuff. So we are incubating a number of things, and I think there's going to be more, so I won't say more now.
Right. So these slides might not be in the most logical order now that we're into it, but basically I wanted to make sure that people understood that there's a long history here with the University of Wisconsin and the University of Guadalajara that way predates my time on this campus. The Nelson Institute has been a key partner for environmental initiatives there and student experiences there, as has the Global Health Institute, of which Lori is a part. This gentleman, Eduardo Santana, who's going to join us later in the presentation from Guadalajara by Skype, is a graduate of the Nelson Institute, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
Forestry and Environmental.
But has had roles within the Nelson Institute, I think, or relationships there.
Yeah, right.
And so there was an opportunity that was identified to do a little bit of a reinvigoration of this relationship. And then that's kind of how this framework of the focus on environmental sustainability, which is an identified issue in that area, the fact that the museum was going to be a new project that was going to be happening anyway in Guadalajara, of which Eduardo Santana is the lead director, conveniently for us, because he's a UW alum and he's somebody that we're collaborating with. And we already have this 30 years of institutional, sort of fiber of working together. And we thought, okay, we can do this little one-year plug, as Lori was describing, that will maybe help us reinvigorate. So let's talk about the museum for a moment, which in fact is the sort of watershed thing that happened in the last few years that allowed us to reinvigorate this relationship based on the way we've set it up in terms of this project. Dr. Eduardo Santana is the director. He is a faculty, I don't think prior to the museum he was necessarily a traditional faculty member at the University of Guadalajara, but I don't have his CV that clear in my mind. But in any case, the University of Guadalajara has asked him to be the director of this large museum project. And it requires a lot of different skills because there's going to be a distinct scientific curatorial part of the project since it is going to be a science museum. But it's also the roles that Dr. Santana has in his past career and currently to wrangle different dynamics within the political environment of Mexico and Jalisco and to make sure that the project management piece comes together with all the different stakeholders. So there are lots of goals that I'm not going to speak to that they have for that project, but there are specific things that I think Dr. Santana views as opportunities to collaborate with scientists that he knows from the University of Wisconsin, like looking at some of the curatorial aspects of the museum, the scientific content, looking at how to use the museum as a place that actually does engage people and that people actually learn from. And really, although it sounds somewhat utopian, I think really to make people feel after they leave the museum that they're going to do something better for the environment and that some of these dramatic issues that we're seeing all around the world, but especially he is seeing in this area of Mexico, that people will actually be able to feel empowered to change those things. So as you can imagine, that's where these ideas of civic engagement and youth development and some of these multidisciplinary themes that we're looking at in our team come into play. It's not just the science, but it's many other things. As you may also imagine, there is a huge issue of accessibility to this museum. To be honest, this is going to be a very amazing, opulent building that the last I heard, Snøhetta, the very famous Finnish or Norwegian architecture firm, won the bid for. You can see how beautiful this museum is going to be. And this is the library that's located next to it, which is currently built while the rest of it is under construction there. Those are pictures from our trip. And yet, there are neighborhoods all around this greater area where people are living in completely different conditions than this and may or may not even see getting to that part of town as a realistic endeavor. So those are some other things that we've had the chance to talk about as a part of this project. So the site is established. We got to see it when we were there recently for a visit. We're going to talk about that more. It has a very grand multidisciplinary concept, and Dr. Santana can hopefully refer to where they are in that process when we tap them in as well. So there are two aims to the IRIS project that we wrote, and I'm going to have Lori talk a little bit about the way that the platform building part of it was envisioned.
Well, I think the best way to share this with you, and pardon me, well, I'm saving paper, so that's why I'm doing this on my phone. I actually printed something out that I failed to bring here, so. But we have some kind of core principles that we established. There are four things that, so part of these global partnerships is we think about what are the mutual benefits here. And I mentioned that doing some kind of engaged research, helping with exhibits, and establishing together some core principles, working through the Earth Science Partnership, which is really the biggest component that you'll hear more about. But some of the core principles that emerged from this were that we really wanted to have kind of an everyone's Earth ethic to everything that we do. So everything would have inclusive voices, and that while it is definitely anthropocentric in concept, you know, that the concept of the museum is saying we want this city to understand the landscapes around it and feel connected so that they can understand how they're supported by that. But we have this other value that really promoting biodiversity is a very important value for us. And it's done in that context, but we want to make sure all of our projects are imbued with that. And then the partnership, just to get into some of the other core values in this research to practice, there's a lot of this is affiliated with the university, so it's like our relationship to the Chazen, right? Which means that theoretically there's a lot of ways that departments and scholars can engage. And so we've begun that with our principal partner being this design program that has it's a sustainable design doctoral program. And there's a lot of opportunities for education, particularly Nelson's master's students, but there's a lot of professional masters. There's one at SOHI, there's a public health program that I'm involved with where students can get involved. So we envision joint education as one of the thematic things that we'll be doing. And then also doing some research about the city. So for example, they're very interested in the relationship between transportation and well-being and disparities. So right now there's several projects underway that they're interested in, and if they get funded, we'll do them. And if not, we have this more robust framework where we'll keep trying until we get something. So we've decided to be a team. We've decided around this space of social inclusion and connecting landscapes and biodiversity and human well-being. And within that, what we actually do will depend on, in a way, what gets funded. And then, of course, we're being proactive about that, so it's not completely reactive. But we kind of have decided to be a team. And so another, I think, philosophical part of our approach is two-way exchanges. A lot of global work is kind of one-way exchange, and ours isn't. Ours is that there are reasons why they would come here to learn and work, and reasons why we would go there to learn and work. So far, it's been two-way. We've had a delegation visit in both directions.
So in the original application for the funding from IRIS, there were two pieces that were really the focal lines for goals of the project, and one line or aim was this idea of using the opportunity for the one-year grant to really think about some multidisciplinary lines of inquiry that we could apply for additional funds for. And so I think Lori has kind of covered what that might look like. But I think that the memorable takeaway is that we will be applying for additional funding opportunities that might have a specific disciplinary focus or subset of the team of people who have worked together in this first incubator year, depending on what the theme of the next concept is. And I think that's really exciting, because I think that at the end of the day, we're going to be garnering more resources and doing deeper work than what we're able to do in this first year, which is really to set the stage for that. And in order to have a very concrete container to make sure we did do some exchanging and working together in this incubator year, there was a program that was pitched, the second line or aim of the IRIS proposal. And Maria's going to speak about that because we're using the Earth Partnership platform for that.
Sure. For those of you who don't know, the Earth Partnership is an ecological restoration professional development for teachers, community members, and youth. It's a way of engaging in stewardship or the land ethic, which feeds into what Lori was saying in terms of thinking of this project much bigger, more of a human ethic. Our program has been around since 1991. We work in Wisconsin. We work with Native American communities. We work with Latino communities. We also work globally in other countries. With Mexico, I think what's interesting is, and the way we've approached it, the previous picture, if you want to show, as part of the delegation that came to Madison, we had them go and visit places where they do science outreach and citizen science, and give them example. Yeah, so this is, we went to, Mary Beth took them to the urban ecology in Milwaukee, and we took them to the Aldo Leopold Nature Center on the east side, and also the Arboretum. And then with our program, we did a few activities to showcase how we engage adults and youth in hands-on restoration activities. And eventually that leads to some sort of restoration, whether it's on school grounds or in community or natural areas. But the way it's going to work in Mexico, we're still kind of ironing that out, because we do have a model of training teachers, but there what we want to do is we want to do, apart from working with teachers, is also working with youth, and then more importantly, using the citizen science aspect in order to inform the museum. So it's going to be a continuous, and that would be a way that they can engage some of the marginalized communities, some of the youth that would naturally not attend this museum because of where it's located or the exhibit, that they can feel a sense of ownership in the information that's presented. So that's going to be, in many ways, a new way of taking our program to another level, and I think it fits very well with what Connie does in terms of youth empowerment and youth civic action. How do they feel empowered by what they do, and feel that the community and society reinforces that in a way that's very positive, and then that can lead to improved educational achievement, engagement in science, engagement in just the community efforts to try to transform their community in a restorative way. So, but I can give you more information on our program and some of the other things we do, but I think with Mexico, what's exciting is that it is a program that's been around, but in Mexico it might be slightly different because of the players and the communities that we're working with, which is wonderful.
May I add a little bit about the,
Sure.
Your partnerships? We have been funding their partnerships through a Title II grant. Title II is Teacher Quality Education Program. Is to actually train teachers to learn how to teach science. And the part of the restoration with the Ho Chunk and with you know, which is the other one?
La Curure.
Ojibwe. La Curure Ojibwe, which is the new one. They actually teach by doing, by learning how to restore the prairie, how to restore the rivers, and then the teachers go back to their schools and incorporate the techniques so that the students are engaged and understand what it is about, you know, learning about doing science. So that is part of the partnership situation. Obviously, internationally, we cannot use our Title II. It's not for here, so we have to find something, some other way to do it. System administration is the central office right across the street. Yeah, and I'm the state director for Title II programs. And so that's, I coordinate the awarding and the review and all of the grants that we award.
Yeah, and this is an aspect of our program that we'll also take to Mexico in terms of talking with the staff of the museum about how they can think of moving forward better trained teachers to use restoration as a way to engage youth and also get them involved in citizen science and feeding back to the museum some of that data and the sharing of that data. So there are many layers to this. It's not just go in, do a training, leave. I mean, we're really working to craft it that it serves the Guadalajara community, museum, staff, teachers, and that it'll serve them well as they go forward.
So in the spirit of the values that Lori was discussing that are critical to the platform of this project, you can hear that notwithstanding the fact that we chose a successful program at UW to be that container, there's been a lot of thought work and a little bit of teeth gnashing trying to figure out how to make it work with a different context in a respectful two-way street kind of way, and our partners there have really guided the way that they want to see this idea come into their context. And similarly, we wanted to make sure we had a two-way street approach to visiting each other's sites. So the first thing we did was bring some collaborators from the team to Madison, as was previously mentioned. And does anybody want to just comment on this? I mean, I think from the team.
Well, I think, I mean, for those of you who don't know the urban ecology or the Aldo Leopold Nature Center, if you're thinking of or talking or trying to think how do we engage youth in civic action, you know, the urban ecology is a great example where they move into marginalized areas, they build these centers, they really work with the schools, they work with the community, they provide a place not only for youth but also for families, and they in turn transform these areas. And that's, I think, in many ways what they're trying to do with this museum in Guadalajara. So that was a great example, and I know that the team from Mexico that came, they were just blown away. Just the possibilities, you know, how do you make this work?
The other thing I would add in terms of what's relevant for people here is when you do these kinds of delegations, if you do them right in terms of really having people get to share their expertise and exchange, it creates opportunities for so many others. So if University of Guadalajara is a partner that you're interested in having, we probably can do some networking around things because of these relationships. But the expertise represented were 3 people from their design program. They're doing work around gender and mobility. They're doing work around rights to the city. They're doing just a lot of things that might be in an urban design, but really with a sustainability focus. And then one of the partners is mostly, he's really like an NGO leader. And when he was brought, this is why it's transformative for the partners also, because they might be in the same orbit, but when they're on a project with us together, they as a team travel together, and they didn't know each other. The three of them have worked together for 25 years, which is great because it's a very stable team, and it means, you know, a lot of things work, or at least they know when they don't work, they know how to fix them quick. But this guy was also brought into that. So there's just a lot of focus on relationships, and then when you're scrambling to find partners for grants, you have them because you've spent some time together. So it's not, hosting people here is really well spent time, I think, for building research partnerships.
Yeah, and that's a theme I tried to also have some fun with in the slides, is just you know, this picture is our like farewell dinner, Paul with Danielle, and I just think that even those like 2 to 3 days that we spent together really created a lot of camaraderie among the group, and that has carried through, and that, you know, goodwill together, I think, is going to be a theme as we continue to figure things out as we go. So then we had to do our delegation visit to Guadalajara, or not had to, but got to, and a team needed to be kind of figured out of the original grant proposal, and some of the areas of interest that we knew we needed to address. And I'm actually going to let Lori talk a little bit about this, because it's important that we emphasize that just those who got to go on the delegation visit, or those of us here today, are not necessarily the full potential team of people that would be working on this stuff. But I just thought maybe you wanted to comment on kind of what areas of interest are represented there, and then say something maybe about Tom or the others that didn't get to go but are maybe.
Well, I think that what we knew by design was happening, which did happen, and it's okay, was we tended to emphasize the social science design part of this, and the only person who's really kind of a basic scientist on our team was Paul, and then we were working with this design studies unit. So when we look back to our core values, we have a little more networking to do to really make sure that we have the scientific partners that we should have on the other side. Eduardo comes here frequently, and he has really long-term relationships with a number of people, so this is all right within our reach. But I think, you know, we don't want to let the good be the enemy of the best, but I think that was, you know, that was the only thing that was a little bit missing from our team. But we did a really good job of spreading ourselves pretty well. Noah Feinstein, for example, happened to be on sabbatical, but we bugged him enough times that he actually came along, and he's a critical person because he's a person who does environmental museums and pedagogy issues at UW-Madison. So we did bring them something old and something new, people who they've known for a really long time, and a lot of people who are new to the work. Another thing I'll comment on is, like, little things are definitely happening. We have a proposal underway related to gender and transportation. We have a proposal related to rights to the city, which is a big conversation that's very relevant here. And that proposal, whether it gets funded or not, we've been able to fund a small curriculum development project that Carolina Sarmiento will lead on rights to the city. So we'll have that curriculum impact. And then borrowing on the history of this, getting the public involved in environmental monitoring so that there's that accountability. So I think Eduardo's remembering this water project where they got all these mayors involved in an intermunicipal water monitoring project where community members did that. He's interested in doing that around water and air. Well, that was nearly 20 years ago, even though we hate to say that. And the technology around this has changed so much. So we start to be able to think about the big data strategies and the different kinds of sensors that can be used now that weren't around then. And those scientists are in the conversation. So Tracy Holloway has had conversations with Noah, with Feinstein, Sarli Macedo. I'm sorry. Thank you. Mikado? Yeah. She's a literature person, and it turns out that this site, in addition to having this museum, has a world-renowned film festival every year and a world-renowned book fair. So bringing literature in and bringing the humanities in is going to be really a joyful thing. We've also brought in, just to give one more example of people engaging even though they're not there, we have an artist who happened to be doing a kind of sabbatical thing nearby, and she does design with our micro enterprise project. She met with the Huichol community, which is the indigenous group. This is not a highly indigenous part of Mexico, Jalisco, but the Huichol are there, and they have some of their craft traditions. So there'd be a great opportunity for them to conserve culture, be part of the museum by having a sales outlet in the
about 30 years. You're going to see that in the presentation. Salvador Carranza has also been active in one way or another. So welcome. You want me to welcome? We have the room until 1, because we have another conference call after that. But welcome.
So my name is Mary Beth Collins, and I am not the PI on this project, and I'm not even a researcher on the project, but I've been helping facilitate the process of a multidisciplinary project with international collaborators and representatives of many UW.
I want to welcome everybody. My name is Alberto Vargas. I'm the Associate Director of LACIS. And it's really great to have you here for this presentation. It's a presentation that is very important for LACIS and for the university. It's going to be a panel presentation. And also this is going to reflect, if you were curious about what is an incubator grant from IRIS and what's the products that it will yield. So this is an opportunity to learn about this type of collaboration. So
the Madison units, and so true to that role, I think what I'm going to do is kind of prompt my collaborators on particular slides for this presentation and just kind of make sure that things are rolling. So thank you all for being here. We're really excited about this project. And the premise of the presentation today is to tell you a little bit about particularly this research incubator grant that we have through the Institute for Regional and International Studies. And Connie and Paul are our PIs on that, so I was hoping that they could talk a little bit about the project's overview. And then we're going to dig in a little bit on how we got to this incubator project and the work that we've done since receiving the award. So Connie and Paul, do you want to just kind of give some background on the IRIS project?
Sure. So I'll just pick up on the notion of connecting landscapes. So the notion here is that landscapes are both natural environments and often are environments where people live with nature or use or abuse nature. And a large goal of this museum project.
The presenters today is going to be Maribeth Collins from the School of Human Ecology, Maria Moreno from the Earth Partnership, UW Arboretum Earth Partnership, Lori DePrit from Global Health Institute, Paul Sedler from Botany, and Connie Flanagan from the School of Human Ecology too. So Paul and Connie are the PIs of this incubator grant, and the rest of the people have been working on this for a long time. We can trace back the origin of this collaboration